ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, and in its bare essence, it is a benchmark tracking fund. So there will be maybe a benchmark such as the S&P 500, and the ETF is not trying to be clever at all. It is simply an index tracking fund, the most popular one out there, especially available to US investors, is the SPY, or the Spider as they used to call it. And they do trade in the secondary market. So they are similar to, let's say, closed-ended companies in that sense, because once the shares are issued, you tend to trade them in the secondary market. But they're also different from closed-ended funds. I would actually call them a hybrid instrument between closed-ended and open-ended funds, because actually new shares can get created and shares also can get redeemed directly from the fund. But it's not the retail investor doing this, as you show discover on this slide. For the first bullet, just remember, if you're the retail investor, if you're Martin and you want to trade, you're going to be trading in the secondary market. So you're not actually going to be buying the shares directly from the fund. Now, very, very important word coming here: in-kind creation and redemption. So that means that when we are creating or redeeming our shares, we're not doing that in cash. And I should be specific here when I say we. It's not the retail investor here. It's someone called the authorized participant. And I think here, actually, the easiest way for you to start understanding what's going on is if I show you a little diagram. So here on the left, we have the exchange traded fund. In the middle, we will have this authorized participant or participants. So these are large broker-dealer banks. And then here on the right is Martin or yourselves. Now, what happens is, of course, as you would expect it, Martin gives the authorized participants their cash. So I'm going to give you some cash. And in exchange, the authorized participant is going to give me ETF shares. As you can see here, I have not traded directly with the ETF. I've traded with the broker dealer. Now, this is where it's going to get interesting. The authorized participant, guys, actually gives what's called the creation basket to the ETF. And what the creation basket is essentially the underlying securities that make up the fund. So that authorized participant will physically buy the underlying securities in the open market and will deliver them to the ETF. And then the ETF will give in exchange, will give the creation unit to the authorized participant. Now, what is a creation unit? We've explained it here. Creation unit is a minimum lot size used in the creation process. So, for example, the creation unit may be 50,000 ETF shares. So that's the minimum number of shares that will be delivered to the authorized participant should he want to deliver the creation basket. And now, when the authorized participant gets those 50,000 shares, he can then start selling them to the retail investors. So going back to this idea of in-kind creation and redemption, the in-kind refers to the transaction on the left-hand side, is the transaction between the ETF and the authorized participant. Can you see that if investors want more shares, they don't have to approach the ETF? The authorized participant buys those shares in the open market, so it's the authorized participant that incurs the bid-ask spread on the underlying securities, then delivers them to the ETF, and therefore it gets shares. So the in-kind means I'm not giving you cash, giving a creation basket that is effectively equivalent to an ETF share. But more importantly, when I want to get my money back, so Martin wants to get his money back, the authorized participant actually can do the trade in reverse. So that's called a redemption basket. So now they're going to give me the redemption basket and I'm going to give them back their ETF shares. So now the authorized participant now has the underlying securities. He can sell them if he wants, and therefore he can meet the cash redemptions of the retail investors. And the last term on the slide is this idea of the arbitrage gap. So what that means is that the ETF price, the share price of the ETF, is not going to be exactly equal to the net asset value per share of the ETF. Yeah, so they're not going to be exactly identical. You might say, well, why not? Yeah, the ETF share price, the ETF share, is identical. The law of one price dictates the two have to be the same. Not really, because of these things that I've mentioned here. So this is going to be a function, first of all, of the underlying beta spread. That means whenever the authorized participant trades with the ETF, he first needs to go in the open marketplace and buy or sell the underlying securities. What I mean by underlying, maybe Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia. And so he's incurring a beta spread. And because of that beta spread, we are creating a slight difference between the ETF price and the NAV. Under normal circumstances, if there was no beta spread, the minute the ETF price deviates from the NAV, there will be, in fact, an arbitrage opportunity. The authorized participant can step in, buy low, sell high. So if the ETF price is too high, I could buy the underlying securities, get ETF shares, sell the ETF shares. That's gonna push the ETF price down. But because of the underlying beta spread, now we have this arbitrage gap because I need to get compensated. I, as the authorized participant, need to get compensated for that beta spread. Also, anytime I approach the ETF and I want to create shares, I deliver a creation basket, or I get back the redemption basket, I gotta pay a service fee. That service fee also will cause the arbitrage gap to widen because I gotta get compensated for paying that service fee. Again, when I say I mean the authorized participant. The third reason why the arbitrage gap may exist is time zone differences. So you might have an ETF that is located in America, but the underlying stocks are in Taiwan, right? So obviously, Taiwan markets may be closed when American markets open and vice versa. That's causing timing differences, that's causing delays, that is introducing risk for which the authorized participant must get compensated. So what kind of question can I expect here? Well, it's going to be a qualitative question, will it not? And it's going to be about what positively or negatively impacts the arbitrage gap.